Heba here, welcome back to our channel. Today's podcast is diverse indeed. I will be talking about many topics including Christic mechanics, Anti-Krystic mechanics, time cycles, arcs, earth swabbles, spiral of creation, poison apple configuration and much more. This will really help you if you are serious about your ascension and DNA activation. It is not hearsay but scientific. True science based on spiritual and scientific principles. The real purpose of science is to expound on the spiritual principles that have come out or that have become out of our reach when we descended and evolved as a race. So this body of information will change your life and empower you to see things very differently. And I'll be making several parts to this particular topic for the purpose of keeping them reasonably short, like an hour or slightly over. We're certain that this knowledge will inspire you immensely to see things in a different light, and especially if you carry an indigo shield, then this is definitely for you. But of course, everyone will benefit, whether indigo or not, because this information is the doorway to our freedom, to getting out of this stuckness, and to attain self-actualization and liberation from all the things that have kept us so stuck in this mind, body, soul construct. Now, if you are particularly drawn to the techniques, then you can choose to begin activating. However, you need to listen to this before you activate so that you are aware of what this journey entails and what this information is about. If you're serious about your ascension, this is, of course, a must-watch. So it's going to take you gradually into new depths and explore each part, just so that you, when you come to do the flame body activations and all the other techniques, that you're well aware of why you're doing them. And just a simple suggestion before I begin is, if you find something difficult to understand, instead of quitting altogether, forward it to the next part and ignore it for now. Come back to it later should you choose to, because each piece of knowledge is a frequency, and frequency accretes at different rates within each person. So now is a very critical time, yet exciting and significant. So why? Why is the buzz? Why the urgency? In just a few words, we're on the verge of a leap in time. I will explain this, so stay with me to the end if possible. The top part of our natural organic Merkaba, and if you're not sure what a Merkaba is, please listen to my other YouTube video titled Merkaba Mechanics. That part of the Merkaba has been phase-locked for so long, keeping us in a time loop, in physical temporal triangulation, if you like, within the materialistic confines of the physical manifestation. As long as the top part of our Merkaba is dormant, things like time travel, interdimensional travel, ascension out of the 3D matrix, reality field, is prevented. So then what makes now the great time? It's because we've reached the gift of activation, from the techniques and tools to bring our memories and records back. And these memories hold the keys to the maps, to the arcs, the gates of universal, galactic, cosmic, and temporal spirals of creation. So the key thing to manifesting out of the physical into the metaphysical and the higher density levels is to understand three main things. Also, it does entail working on these progressively and not just understanding them on a mental level. These three things you need to make your life mission if you're serious about ascension. And by the way, just a small tip here, if there's anything worthy of writing down, is those three key things. So pause here, go get a pen and paper, write them down, and come back to them often, because you'll need to remind yourself of these three key things if you're, like I said, if you're serious about your ascension journey. Now, the first thing is become aware of mechanics of Merkaba, the natural organic energy vehicle that's not phase locked, understand how it works, the difference between organic and inorganic Merkaba and how to activate it, and make it your life mission to progressively activate your personal Merkaba. That's 1. 2, understand the time cycles, the Yugas, so you could understand when the stargates open in preparation for ascension, because everything happens in cycles. It's vital to understand the cycle of time if you care about the stargates and ascension. 3, align your personal shield with the Christic arc. This will be discussed later on. This has to do with using specific codes to anchor the arc frequencies into your shield. They're also known as the monadic codes. Once you do that, you become a walking healer for the planetary shields in terms of helping the regeneration of the organic grid works of consciousness and the shifting back of the Earth tilt, which is at the moment tilted and has been for a very long time, tilted to 23.5 degrees. So if another note here is if you feel any of this is a little beyond your understanding right now, that's okay. This happens if DNA is not yet activated to the level required to understand these things. But first, we must have the desire to learn, then the intention to learn, then the manifestation of the desire will come. So my recommendation is, instead of pursuing activation, clear the field first. Clear the area, clear the field. That's something I've talked about numerous times in many of my other podcasts, especially the latest one concerning pineal decalcification and J-seals removal. When you begin setting intentions and start with 12D shielding and basic cathartic techniques, slowly you will begin to understand these. First on a higher level, then you will understand them on a mental level. So what happened in 2012? Something indeed happened, something big happened. Although the pole shift was prevented, in 2012 we hit 0 point on Eka, universal, galactic and personal level, where the pillars, the arc, the angles of the electric current flows anchored from the Eka levels. So it was anchored, and that we call point 0. We were separated from the Metatronic spiral, and hence we went on a different curve. We went on a different angle, a different destination, if you like. This is why it's important to know the Yuga cycles, so you know how to work with incoming energies during the phase of a stellar activation cycle and higher Eka frequencies at the right time. In 2012, we went back into the time of manifestation to the point before creation point. We had an ability to reprogram our Kathara template, so we're given that opportunity again. There are simple ways to do it. We know now the Yuga cycle information available to increment the frequencies would aid us to reset our Kathara template and grid works of consciousness on a planetary and solar level. Moving through the time cycles comes down to using 24 mathematical codes and symbols according to Keylontic science. And they have to be used in a specific way to activate and reset our shields. And of course, transcend the dualistic programming by way of activating our Ra centers, which is primal light within our biofields, and restore connection to the heart's life node. Something big was prevented in 2012. But if the negative orchestrators had it their way in August 2012, we would have had a satellite that was created from what's left after Maldek blew up, and it was pulled into the orbit, into our solar system, or is going to be pulled into the orbit, and it was going to cut in between Earth and the Sun and go on a complete reversal because of Jupiter 666 triangulation. It would literally rip the whole solar system and solar plane into reverse orbit, and it was meant to blend artificially with the antiparticle system and create a massive 55 spin anti-Krystic Metatronic Merkaba, which I'll explain what it is in just a bit. But this is, think of it as a beast machine that would literally eat our universe and many, many other universes. It's a big destruction machine. And because certain things went down, we had little help from the Anunnaki race, who normally conspire against us, and not to mention they defected from the Emerald Covenant. However, this time it worked in their favor to help us. They didn't like the Andromes, who they were in a war with, so they agreed to help us to prevent that big blending experiment or dimensional blending experiment from taking place, literally leading to annihilation and catastrophe from taking place. So the Anunnakis used heliothalic currents and ran them in reverse to be able to sustain their own 55 vehicle on one side, instead of mixing with the new big satellite thing that was coming. It was separated from it, and the two didn't blend, so it prevented this big catastrophe from taking place. But it still meant that there's a part of the planet and the galactic and universal grids that did fall at that time due to whatever arcs connected that went down at the time. But whoever and whatever grid still connected to the Krystic arcs will go in a complete other direction, meaning we'll be saved if we're on the Cathara spiral. So the separation from the Metatronic spiral was actually occurred in 2012. Thankfully, no pole shift occurred. However, there was major catastrophic events that took place. We now know we have the Krystic codes to anchor into the fields, and we have 12D currents running, and the Earth is literally healing parts of its grids that will go into ascension Earth when the whole Starfire activation process begins in 2047. So the other parts will be the fallen ones and will not be redeemable. The 1/4 of the planet will be bio-regenerated, but the remaining will not. Right now, Earth has a problem, and the problem is we're stuck on a 23.5 degree wobble. So what that means is it's not organically and naturally aligned to the Krystic angles and arcs. And the same reason caused its destruction and pole shift back, millions of years. So now we have Krystic information to know how to save the planet by recalibrating the arcs and angles to allow Earth and the population of Earth to ascend. There was a separation in 2012 of the organic grids from the Metatronics. And if you're serious about ascension, know that there is a place to accrete frequency, not out of body. Essentially, the process of ascension is an inscension. It's an in-journey, an inward journey. There is no savior. This is not a savior programming that we're connected to if you are on the true ascension path. It is an inward journey of shedding old fears and transmuting unhelpful habits, low-frequency habits and emotions, mind thoughts and actions that are not aiding your ascension and activating your DNA. The resolution lies in activating your personal Merkaba. As I said, the first thing, activating your Merkaba so you can prepare yourself to travel through stargates when the Starfire process begins in 2047. Also, clear miasmic patterns, the shadow dances. So we do this with flame body activations, J seals, decalcifying the pineal gland, overcoming blind spots in your awareness, things that you're not aware of. Just know where you're holding cognitive dissonance. And I made a video on that too. These are all important, but also activating through flame body activations. And the bottom line is to just be a good person at heart. Do not participate in the warring, in the duality system. Don't participate in the separation system, in the duality system. Don't feed it. Do your due diligence in sharing the information where you think it may make a difference. It's important before you try and understand the Yugas and, the Yugas, and this information is not going to be helpful if you're carrying miasmas in your field. These have to be cleared first. And the best Merkaba teachers are the Ianis. We are the Ianis right now. We're here to bring this information and to remember the information because we already know it. We're here to remember so that we can drive that organic Merkaba once again. But you have to understand what's standing in your way of that knowledge, why you're not able to remember this information. Because when they communicate with us here, they haven't forgotten these teachings like we have, but when they communicate with us, they'll teach us how to make the arc link and start writing those organic arcs and Krystic spiral once again. So I want to talk a little bit about the Fibonacci, biggest scientific deception, if you like. It's also called the fib of no chi. And I want to talk about how the zero was removed and how it's related to the Death Star Merkaba mechanics. So the negatives have found a way to make it science, mainstream science, and push the Fibonacci sequence and the science of Fibonacci in mainstream and becomes the basis of everything mathematical in our world as we know it. They've taken the zero out from the mathematical equation, which does not give us access to the original point of creation from whence we come. So in, with Fibonacci, you can see a clear manifestation of the infiltration and the intentional reversal in the sequence, in the teachings, in the New Age arena specifically. But we know something. We know that the halls of Amenti are 9 veils and the 0.9 is the sacred number. And to access the 9, we need to go through the 3-6, 3-6-9. But there's more because we need to start at the birth point of all this, and that's 0. So 0, 3, 6, 9, 11, 12. If you're familiar with the Kathara grid, we call this the path of Amaria. It's an upward spiral where we begin at 0 and we go up through the 3, 6, 9 into the 11 and 12. And this is where the primary stargate is at 12, which happens to be the stargate that the negatives, they want to try so hard to destroy. These stargates, the 11 and 12 specifically, to prevent our ascension. And what's really interesting about 9 is 9's the only number that never changes. You multiply 9, reduce it, everything that multiplies with 9 always reduces to 9. Even 3, 6 oscillate in the duality of the yin and yang, which is also reverse code, by the way, to keep you locked in the duality of the checkerboard of the black and white. So 3 and 6 equals 9, and multiples of 9 always reduce to 9. There is also the 9/11 event. They wanted to destroy the 9 on purpose by creating the 9/11 events. The 11 is a symbolism of the Twin Towers. And the 9 is meant to be the beginning of something new, a new phase. But instead of a positive cycle of awakening that they knew about, that they knew was coming, they insisted on creating events where the world will essentially go through destruction, division, and hatred, amongst other things. And The split in the Earth's shield and mass consciousness created a new round of nines carrying duality codes once again, just when humanity was on the verge of uniting coming into 2012. So this coincided also with the stellar activation cycle that began in 2000, concluded in 2017. Now we have all stargates closed, but some are not really closed, and we can still access the codes from these stargates. Nevertheless, that split was huge. It led to ripples of events and actions of terrorism, hatred, wars, fear-mongering, all sustained and perpetuated by the media. And by the way, the word media refers to the middleman between us and knowledge and information. So it's a medium. So they become the word. Media became the word and the driving force of the mass consciousness on a global scale, not to mention 9/11 event created a time ripple, artificial wormhole that's directly connected to their black hole system and fed their black hole system, as did the Atlantean cataclysm. Additionally, 9/11 in Roman numerics is the 1xx1, 1xx1, which, if you know some tarot, little symbolism in the symbol of Saturn cube matrix energy, so siphoning software, it transfers through the Kabbalah, which is Kaaba, and false crucifixion implants through the external lines on the left side, all aim to hijack our life force. All is connected, as above, so below. Merkabas are interdimensional vortex mechanics that are unnatural and sustained from Metatronic codes. And we're talking here about the unnatural Merkaba, not the organic Merkaba. They sustain of Metatronic codes. And if they're pushed far enough, they break completely from eternal life and lose their templating. And when the level of damage is beyond repairable, like now, the template has to go back to space dust through the black hole system, then phantom, and at the point of extreme destruction, when the black hole gets really, really big, like now, and they've siphoned the energy off the planet, the sun. The sun gets its energy off the galactic shield, by the way. So literally they're using Earth and its resources as a sucking mechanism. So when things get really bad, something happens, the Creator allows, and that's an activation of the reset button. A reset button, like I said before, back to point zero, where new frequencies become activated. They're called Hithara and Hithalon. Then these frequencies become, their role is to restore, regenerate, and heal. And so we can go back to the original codes necessary for the evolution. Otherwise, we'll end up with an extinct race. And that's not something that the Creator would allow. So the arcs that I've mentioned, they're constructed from high frequency on and off flash line, positive and negative frequencies, and their electromagnetic frequencies. Arcs continue from first creation level all the way to the top, and all arcs form wheels, and the arcs are so organized in such a way that forms a perfectly harmonious universe before the distortions infiltrated our energy matrix. So we go back to that configuration. The dark avatars knew the secrets to manipulating those arcs and can use them to also draw us back in time, back into the time rift, back to Atlantis, and through the artificial wormholes that they've created, like the 9/11 wormhole. So the secret to manifestation is the Christic dream seed. It's the opening to the monad, and not just the personal monad, but also planetary monad. It's a stargate. So when the Eka levels, when the alignment, the arcs come in from the Eka levels, and there is an implant in the Earth's grids, a pole shift, an Earth tilt, and reversal energy takes place. So we, on a personal level, don't receive that energy. Instead, it hits us, and then it causes a shift in the central, like the shift in the balance. And instead, we are pushed into alignment with the black hole system instead. That wobble in the Earth's axis, it is a 23.5 degree axis, and we call it poisoned apple. It's because the Earth is not directly rotating north and south at the sun's axis, which means we're not receiving the sun codes in the places where we're meant to receive them, whether in the Earth's body or our personal bodies. The Fibonacci spiral is aligned to the locked Merkaba of the poison apple, which is an AI Merkaba built on counterfeit science. And the Fibonacci formula, by the way, is a 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, 35, 55. Surprise, we've got 55, the golden number of the Death Star Merkaba. So they love their 555. Also, if you see the 555, you know they're into all the numbers and all mean something. The Merkaba, the artificial Merkaba, or the Death Star Merkaba, spins at a 55 degree phase locked. It's the degree of rotation is way too fast, and it's not counter rotating, okay? Rather both spinning in the same direction. So the Fibonacci sequence, in the Fibonacci sequence, you find the Death Star reversal numbers for the two tetrahedrons, which make up the Anti-Krystic Merkaba vehicle. So that's what we call the Anti-Kryst. Okay, it's a 21 and a 34 degree, speed rotation, and they're both going in the same way. If you add them up, it becomes a 55 phase locked Merkaba. It is aligned to death and mortality, which is why we've been dying so fast. When before this time, before the Metatronic technology, we've been living up to 1,000 and only choose to leave to take on another form. So it's not even a accidental death, or it's by free will. We also demanifest and manifest at will. It is the same as the poison apple configuration. The 55, it's got certain symbolism related to apple, and here's a few clues for you. There's garden of what? And that's using an apple. And the corporation that makes phones, that's got an apple with a bite on the side in the logo. This configuration causes molecular compaction, aka death or early death. There is a YouTube video titled Merkaba Mechanics if you wish to understand this in more depth. Now, the force Merkaba aligns you to the black hole, which is Abaddon, aka hell in the Bible, leading to phantom and Melchizedek matrices that suck you in like a vacuum from which there is no soul retrieval, because at that point the Kathara is too damaged, like you can't put the parts back together, and too fragmented. And eventually this entity has to return to space dust. This false phase lock Merkaba is solidly taught in the New Age teachings. It's the path of false ascension and descension into the black hole system, and that's what we've been taught for so long. Many do not know about these teachings and the difference, but it takes an activated pineal gland and a rational mind, a connected soul, to discern truth from false. This is why you need to activate the pineal gland so you can discern this knowledge for yourself. Now, more on Fibonacci, or Fib of Nochi. A mathematical formula removes the 0 point, and that's to siphon the energy from our blood, and suppress our natural mitochondria, because everything has to flow back to source, back to 0. Whereas with the Death Star Merkaba mechanics, it is built on returning to the last added number rather than to 0. So the source spiral natural formula is 0, 1, 1. If you add 1 and 1 equals 2, okay, and then you add 2 and 2 equals 4. It's always taking the 0 into the equation, so it's always flowing back into 0 and adding that to the last number, and you get a new number. So it's a 0, 1, 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64. Each of those numbers goes back to 0, flows back into 0, and adds 0 onto the number. Whereas Fibonacci takes the 0 out completely. And since the 0 has been taken out, the connection to eternal light's taken out too, which means no natural Christic light codes from the echo world can get through from dimension 13 and above to us. To sum it up, if you're connected to eternal life, your Merkaba is always replicating at the 45-degree charge, which means it flows perpetually back into source, back into point 0, which is the original point of reset, from whence all creation comes. This is organic Merkaba. When positive and negative charges harmonize, they create that 45 charge, taking that thing back to 0 point, which is connected to the Eka and the Veka worlds. And then that, from 0, is a new birth, a new arc, which is basically a replica of that thing that you essentially, perpetually are self-renewing into as you shift into time and space. And this will give you the ability to always accrete frequency, always oscillate, and forever regenerate. Whereas the 55 charge Merkaba, the mechanics very different, because you don't flow back into the 0, remember. You go back to the last point you left it at, which means the only way to accrete frequency is to attach yourself to other bodies and objects in order to sustain your life, because you've become finite, as I've pointed out numerous times in this segment and others. So how do we journey back home? You may ask, if we locked into a Metatronic configuration. The simple answer is becoming aware first and fixing your alignment. And I'll elaborate on that throughout this podcast and the successive ones. To fully journey back home, you need to align yourself with the universal shield, and this will bring all other shields into alignment. So this becomes your divine template when you can activate all 12 times 2 shields. So in this universe and the antiparticle universe or parallel universe. So you have 12 incarnation times 2, 24 shields unify, and then you will have a complete divine template. You're bringing that together. Our natural stargates carry these formulas for integration of these linking codes and mathematical alignment through the Moda Adora code. Even if the grids fall, you can still do this if you're an indigo. Humans can do it if they have an indigo host. They have to first, though, transmute the body, most likely, leave it behind when they access the Stargate. And they do have access to the Echo world in spirit form, though. So you will need to not only align to the universal gates, taking into account the 23.5 tilt, so you don't allow perfectly to the right like this. You have to take into account the 23.5 degree tilt, but also put the codes the right way in your shield to establish a connection with the universal shields, which are called the solar nodes, the solar nodes. This then When you align, this then becomes a passage to the D13 levels of primal light field, and it's granted when you can align properly and do all what's been said before, and voila, straight into Eka. But you need to carry the DNA template of an indigo or a human. Other templates can't do it this way. They have to go through the natural cycles. And if they're unaware, what happens is if they're unaware of the other artificial cycle, they go through the precession cycles, which end up keeping them stuck in a time-space loop. So as you can see, alignment is really very, very important if you're serious about ascension. The time we're in now, it requires a little effort and a lot of focus and precision to get this right, but it can be done. What can go wrong with a misalignment? So it's the difference between the correct angular rotation spin. It takes into account a 45-degree shift to the next subharmonic or a 90-degree shift to the next density. So it's either you make it to the next density or subharmonic, or you don't. And that's why we have to be aligned properly. The metatronic flower and the yin-yang symbols are both inverted to keep you off that alignment, so you don't go through, and then they lose their source of energy luge. The Metatron flower, also known as the death flower, in many New Age circles, it's called the sacred. It's the sacred code for the lotus flower, I think. I just forgot the name, but the Metatron flower actually phase locks. It locks you in place. The natural lotus buds of the Kathara system, the true flower of life, it's based on 60 points. It's the Metatronic, I'll say this again, the Metatronic flower is locking you in place because it's based on 60 points, not 45. And it pulls the petals out of the natural 45-degree position and it becomes a 60-degree alignment, which prohibits the natural yan-yun flow, not yin-yang. That's a reversed code. The yan-yun is original code. So it prevents that flow and backflow to source after it recharges and recycles. So in simple terms, the Metatronic flower steals energy and suffocates our matrix by messing with the natural mathematical architecture and the breathing flow that was set in place 950 billion years ago. It's not something new. And another manifestation of the perversion that took place is the famous yin-yang, which originally was a yan-yun. It looked like a butterfly. The yin-yang, commonly used now, represents or is said to represent harmony and equality between male and female energy, is actually based on the poison apple configuration. The one with the dot inside and two sides. It's based on the Garden of Eden Metatronic poison apple, symbolic of the gravitron artificial toroidal nets, which translates to electrostatic closed loop body, just like the Ouroboros that I've been speaking about in previous podcasts. They all prevent a natural electrodynamic, electromagnetic perpetual flow back into source. They actually create an artificial electrostatic flow. So you're using essentially your own energy to remain sustained. And essentially the yin-yang is a bipolar fluctuation code that signifies that we're stuck in the two polarities. So it's an extreme polarity of high and low and keeping the world polarized like that, especially after 9/11. That's to keep us triangulated and tethered in the cycle of incarnation, death, old age, reincarnation, and infinitely so. Another relevant example of perversion is, of course, not the 12, the 10 Kabbalah tree versus the Christic 12-based tree. The latter, which is the Christic tree, carries and exhibits the true mathematical codex for ascension that I've talked about before. And the reason for all this perversion is to, of course, pull you out of alignment now that you're aware of this. They're pushing even harder to keep you out of alignment. So now they're creating all these fake, psychological operations like, Bluebeam, Project Bluebeam, and the Savior Programming, Sexual Misery, Armageddon. And now we have a new one, which is to fight global warming. They have to block the sun so the globe will cool down. Of course, not to forget AI as well. So it's all to keep us locked into this configuration of the poison apple. All we have to do is really follow these ascension mechanics and the true ascension mechanics, which if you really have a pineal gland activated, you can feel the difference. You'll be able to discern the difference and realize who you are and what really fits with your organic body. So there's a lot more to talk about. So I'll go on for a little bit more and I'll cap it on 1 hour, and then I'll make a part 2, maybe a part 3. It gives you a bit of an idea because they're all tied in together and it's really hard to separate those topics. So brings me to a question, and it's how do we transcend the dual expression of this individuation? So how do we leave this dualistic world, or how do we transcend the dualism? Well, this is the work of inner magic. It's an ascension. It's inner alchemy, and that's to push within the self and to redirect the mind. And to redirect the mind, we have to watch out for triggers. We have to watch out for emotional triggers. We have to watch for where we've got like dark spots, lack of knowledge, where we have cognitive dissonance, where we're making false assumptions, and where our ego feels superior, and where there's flaws, where there's a lack of self-love and resentment towards others, whether it's justified or not. Prejudices, like expressing resentment towards others due to whatever, gender, race, looks, speech, the way they think, or whatever. These are subjective assumptions, and they're old paradigms that have to go. They reinforce dualistic expressions. So we must become aware of these and of our own blind spots before pointing the finger to others. We have to point to us. We have to work on ourselves, alchemize, transmute ignorance, the shadow aspects, the weaknesses, the toxic traits. So we don't become fully self-actualized and fully integrated with these, but by healing them. We don't push them to the side like New Age is teaching. Just push them to the side, ignore the ego exists, forget it exists, and just access your higher energy centers. It doesn't work like this. It's an integration process. Now, fortunately, running correct frequencies, tones, symbol codes, etc., and doing the DNA activations, listening to satsang, which is higher knowledge, eating non-harmful foods, nurturing and caring for one's own mind and body, these activate the fire letters. There is no magical solution. We can't just pick up a code, carry it, put it on the right body part, and then voila, that's it, no more work. No, we have to go through the gateways, through the gates of true intelligence, which means we have to become the magicians. We have to go through the whole process of integration however long it may take. So how can we understand then what we need to do? Well, first, activate the first eye, or the third eye, if you like to call it that. Go beyond the illusions of separation, duality, triangulation. So you can carry a journal, and each time you find that you're stuck in some sort of duality system, you write it down. After some time, you can start to see patterns, and you can start to override these patterns. So intention is everything. Desire, intention, then manifestation. So you can free yourself from the matrix and the prison of your own mind first, and the limitations that you create within your own reality field. You need to transcend those limitations too. Like if you want to do the work, want to spread this information, start helping other people clear their seals, helping yourself clear the seals, but something's holding you back, you have fears, you're too attached to your job, you don't want to leave your 9 to 5 or 9 to 9 job, and you don't have time for you to care for yourself. You need to reconsider those decisions, because this is coming out of fear for security or insecurity. It's just a fear that you have. If you re-examine your life and you look at options, you'll find that you don't have to be stuck in that time cycle anymore. Especially if you're a human guardian, because human guardians hold 12 DNA double-strand template, and indigos hold anywhere between 24 and 48 double DNA strand templates. And we are here for the purpose, for the mission. We're here to restore the 144 frequency, which is the 144 5-letter codes, reach the 13th dimension and beyond, which offers us a lifeline out of this time-space matrix where we've been stuck in the time loop for so long. It is a process of ascension, and it is an ascension as well. The difference is ascension happens within, and ascension happens outside, and they're both connected. We couldn't do this before. So if you're asking, well, why didn't I know about this information before? Simple answer is because stargates were closed. We didn't have the access codes for them. It's like when you don't have the key to the house, you can't go to the house until you get the key. And right now we have the keys. We didn't have access to those Kirashe and Kundare fields, which are primal light and primal sound fields. What we had is false ascension matrix. We had this for a very long time, and we have to thank the New Age teachings for this false ascension timeline. That's where we were for a long time, and others. And all this was orchestrated through, and is still orchestrated, because now the push is greater than any other time I've seen before. It's just incredible, the push right now. Like, just to give you an example, more than ever, I'm seeing the full moon rituals and things like that. It's just really crazy out there right now. So that's all to do with reversing us back to, bring us back into the Death Star mechanics, which we are trying to avoid, and go the opposite direction from that. And all this is also orchestrated through the eye of Metatron and the eye of Horus, which belongs to the Illuminati and One World government orchestrators. They're the ones that have activated the beast, the Wizardek and Wizardrak, the Anunnakis, the reptilians, the fallen angelic legions, the creators of the black hole systems, the APIN and the net systems, amongst many others. They conspired together and at times alone, fighting each other, to run these reversals, but were unfortunately partly successful, because they did lead humanity to its demise, and we fell, and not just the human race, but the whole entire gridworks of consciousness, except for a few that managed to stay on higher earth or become higher earth, and some parts of the inner earth that's still preserved by the Iani priests. who are still there to guide us back into the healing and ascension. The Metatronic eye is the programming that reversed the 144 divine coding sequence to form the Anti-Kryst. Anti-Kryst is not a person, it's not an individual. It is a person or a group of people that are locked into the Metatronic configuration, the 55-degree Merkaba, but they're not one person. It's not one person. It's a beast system. It's a technology. And if you look at movies they make, they show it to you. It's an eye opener. They show you everything. They reveal the method. The goat in the satanic occult religion represents the down-facing triangle. It's a statement of reversing and rejecting the Trinity, which is the sacred feminine, sacred masculine, and the void. So they are reversing that and making that statement. And the symbolism they use is actually their downfall, because everyone's waking up to the symbols they're using everywhere, like most recently in the Olympics. They're clearly showing the rejection of the Trinity, the Christ consciousness, and the upward movement towards eternal light. Their god is Moloch, another satanic false god worshipped through the moon network, and by the way, the moon's connected to Saturn. Moloch, the owl, is occult symbolism representing the wisdom of the Anunnakis today that have become the Brotherhood of the Stake, the Illuminati Nation, the Illumination, or the ones that are illuminated. That's what they refer to themselves. There's a lot of details to discuss. I'm just barely touching, just scratching the surface here. But I'm reserving this topic for another podcast of its own, because it's a rather large topic. It requires a lot of details, a lot of connections, and I feel like they need to be explained in more detail. So we're not victims here. We didn't come here to get a lifeline, and we're not victims praying for salvation, praying for help, praying to be rescued. We're here to restore and to be a part of the Bio-regensis process, because of the immense damage that has been caused to our personal and planetary gridworks of consciousness. If you are held at 2 strands, it means you're held at the emotional body. Your potential is actually 12 to 15 if you're carrying the human template. And it's not just physical genetics, it's everything that's connected to your anatomy on 15 levels. And that includes physical, emotional, mental, archetypal, soulful, monadic, angelic, Christic, Buddhic, all levels up, and including primal light and primal sound fields too, the 12 dimensions and above. We've come here to put ourselves together again, by aligning and becoming at one, atonement, the mind and heart uniting with the soul codes. That soul codes will align the mental and emotional body. But it doesn't help if we don't remember how. Fortunately though, we've been given the how, and that's why it's so vital to know the cycles of the Yugas. This will be, the cycles of the Yugas will be the next topic for a new podcast, just so I don't go over the 1 hour. And with this being said, I'll bring the segment to an end. As I said, this is part 1 of 2 or more, so keep an eye out for the next one, where I'll be talking about alignment, Yuga cycles of incarnations, and much more interesting stuff. Until then, take care. Much love.